So hot this frock.
Like, oh, I think
We're always the blue dog. But we do have a little storm. Details. No hail.
And she said,
No hail, probable hail. Yeah, I just maybe 5 hail this morning. There's the house. Oh, yeah. 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 I saw that. I said, north. Yeah, just a little bit like that. Right. The dog wants to come in.
right, okay. You had read the little start they had for this. Oh, gosh, I saw it dog by the post. I saw it by the pond.
Yeah. Do that. And there's no two, not 12, they gave the training. Boxes. But they're still too big. Hardware crates.
Same thing.
It's a, no, I said it. Oh,
From this. They said he was gonna pick him up. Hopefully it'll get.
We need to bed.
Yeah.
This is right. Oh.
Yes. In the
Supporting our country with, well, production or for the city. Oh, with the city.
Oh,
I knew that.
It's not for the station. That was nice. And we have. Wow. Speaker on over that. That we have to take care of our. City is a city. We don't need to have our country. You're not saying our country is an American, it's about rule. Gotcha. Rule, gotcha. Okay, okay. And we have to decide that's for it. Yeah, so she went down across the country and did. Oh, right.
I know, last week. Thanks.
Oh.
I got all that scan. Yeah. I don't have, I didn't look anything up, you know, the dust and dirt on, you know, I could do that. What do you need about?
You got
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know how things work, you know.
No, but I'm wondering too.
You get cranky, you get.
Yeah, yeah.
So just to your back. I sometimes forget that I have to. Like, all right. So just when you're okay. Yeah. All right. Sounds good. I'll get up and introduce you too. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go fill this.
And I pulled it out and guys, it's just really like. Yeah. Yeah, see how ours do that. Yeah. Yes, what we think.
The gang's over here.
Now we can start.
Oh, here goes a little now. Can you leave out? Oh, yes. Go ahead. Okay, what the heck? Here. Hey, the gang's over here. Everyone can have. She said. We were off to a good start.
This is a rowdy table.
This is, yeah, that's your rowdy table.
Them in the dark. He's got.
That's your chair. I did the left, right? Yeah.
Get that picture, get that first picture.
Yeah, in.
Go fix that.
Okay. Good. It'd be afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so glad y'all are all able to join us this afternoon with the rainy weather we're having. Definitely a blessing. We needed the moisture. I just wish it would have been yesterday when it was 100 degrees outside. This is the Kansas Oil Museum, our speaker series. We do our speaker series on the third Thursday of every month. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers both today and for the rest of the year. If you're wondering who our speakers are for the rest of the year, there is a list of that on that back table. One exciting thing that we will be starting next month is partnering with Bruco to give you the option to pre-order some lunch and have it here during our speaker series. So that is something that you can look forward to and look for some information coming out soon. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, Diana Edmiston. She is a teacher in Wichita and a longtime living history actor here at the museum, and just a wonderful person that I have been grateful to get to know here recently. Thank you, Diana. I have everything that I don't need. So, and clip that.
All right. So I'm going to stand here and here. So hopefully you'll be able to hear me. My voice doesn't carry unless I'm talking right in here.
Will you clip that microphone to your jacket for me? This one works too.
This one. Yeah, either one.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. I can see how it goes. I thought this was that one.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, well, welcome. And yeah, thanks for coming out in the rain. I didn't know it was going to rain, and I heard drops, and I looked at the radar this morning, and it's just wave after wave that's on its way. So here we are. So, okay. This is a talk mostly about the Hoover Apron, or also called a Hooverette. couple of examples over here. It's also a talk about how we got to a Hoover apron, which brings in World War I, food shortages, presidents, lots of things. So it's going to be a lot of kind of topics that come together into a talk about dresses. So here is kind of a 1930s era Hooverette. And that's kind of, if somebody says Hooverette, that's kind of what comes into my mind. Maybe yours too, if you're used to seeing these. I thought you had a question. Okay. So it did begin with World War I, the story of the Hooverette. And even before the US was in World War I, there were, the war was going on, and the US was involved in certain aspects. One of those was the famine. Germany occupied Belgium, basically took their food supply, left Belgians without food. It was dire. And there was an organization that voluntarily compiled and donated grains and food, got them to Belgium, got them distributed, and prevented much starvation that would have happened without it. Herbert Hoover, young Herbert Hoover, led that organization. It delivered 700 million pounds of flour from America to feed 10 million Belgian people. So here's a picture of young Herbert Hoover and then him as president later on. Young Herbert Hoover went to Stanford. He was in the inaugural class at Stanford. It was a brand new university then. He got a geology degree. When he entered Stanford, he flunked all the entrance exams except for math. He still got in. So after graduation, he worked in mining in Australia and China, became successful, became wealthy, a very young, wealthy person. And then when this need came up in Belgium, he was moved to become, to kind of take on a humanitarian role. So he got donations of grain. He assembled fleet of boats that could get it over to Belgium. He got it into kitchens and got it distributed. Here is a picture that kind of gives an idea of the scale of the operation. These are just giant bags of grain on their way to Belgium from the US. He leased a fleet of 75 ships. He conspicuously marked them to hopefully avoid getting torpedoed, and it substantially worked. There were a few torpedo incidents. And he got, once in Belgium, he got the grains distributed to a network of 40,000 public kitchens. It did not go to individuals or individual homes. It went to kitchens that then gave out the food in portions to any person who came to the kitchen. So you didn't have to show need. You didn't have to show that you were anti-German. If you came to the kitchen, you got fed. These are some of the posters from that effort. These are not the best images. You can find better images on internet. I've got a whole lot of images in this presentation from the internet. These came from my camera in 2008 when I went to Belgium. And that's kind of what started this journey for me. I did not know about this World War I effort. And when I was visiting Bastogne, I just sort of encountered this exhibit that told this story about what America did to feed Belgium in World War I. And what I also wasn't expecting was the immense gratitude that they show. So still today, they want it known, they want the story known, and it was quite a thing to be in the presence of that gratitude. So, and to put that in perspective, I was there in October 2008, and when I got home that next week, it was the presidential election between Obama and McCain. So that's kind of the time period and the setting. So, in April 1917, the US did enter the war, and then it wasn't until August when the US Food Administration was formed. It took Congress several months to agree on a legislation that would allow for food conservation. They were worried about the markets and what it might do to the markets, and then they were worried about after the war what would happen to the markets when they undid these regulations and provisions for sort of controlling the market a little bit. So eventually in August, the law was passed that allowed for the formation of the Food Administration. Hoover was appointed by Wilson to lead the Food Administration, and he did it through the effort through a network of homemakers and home economists that we'll talk about next. So one of the things he did with the Food Administration was he asked the magazines to kind of tell the story of what was needed. So this is the August 1917 Ladies' Home Journal cover page, and then on page 25 we have a feature page called The Women in the War, and it's what Herbert Hoover was asking of every homemaker, everybody in charge of the house and the food. So I'm going to zoom in on some of those things. First, there was this little card or this little square to cut out and send in, pledging that you as a homemaker were going to follow the advice and recommendations of the Food Administration and help to conserve food both for the countries that needed it, for their people, and for our army. So, whoops. There was also a box that gave suggestions on how to conserve. Some of those, I can almost hear my mom saying, no second helpings, don't eat between meals. Down here at the bottom, it says personal marketing instead of by telephone. And that, in that time, that meant like going to the store yourself instead of calling and having something delivered. So apparently that was another way to conserve. So, and then at the bottom of that page, there was a letter from the president telling every single homemaker that you matter and your effort is necessary to achieving our objective in the war. So almost 1.2 million Americans signed the pledge, but it was voluntary. So then the Food Administration had to figure out how to make sure that this resulted in actual conserving of food to get it overseas where it was needed. And so he brought in home economists. So that is my background. So I'm happy about this. Also in the 1910s, the role of nutrition and dietetics was brand new. They were starting to understand the role of calories, that lean or a thin body didn't mean unhealthy, it potentially meant healthy. And they had not yet isolated a lot of the individual vitamins and minerals that later on they learned were, had specific roles in health. So that was very new at the time, and it was part of the discovery in having people cut back and eat differently. The extension service began at that time also, and then the home economists that were kind of recruited to get this information out, they started doing demonstrations in classrooms. They formed a lot of clubs or met with a lot of clubs. That was one strategy used. So this was the next month in the Ladies' Home Journal. It was a question and answer based on that list of things they suggest that you do to conserve. And then down here in this little bottom square, or this little bottom box, there we see our first look of the Hoover Apron. So here it is. So they called it the Hoover Helper's Uniform. And it was supposed to be made of blue chambray with white collar and cuffs. The cuffs were removable. And it's supposed to completely wrap around what you're wearing. And it has a double front so that if it got soiled, you open it up and flipped it the other way and you had a clean dress or clean apron. So if you had made the pledge, you were authorized to wear the uniform, okay? And you could send in and get the patch like she's wearing, or they had a pin as well. You could also send in and order the pattern for 10 cents to make your uniform. There's a picture of the patch. So there's also one on that dress over there, that uniform. So the Hall Pattern Company made a version of the conservation uniform. So you could buy that pattern. Butterick did as well. They called theirs the official conservation uniform. And now I've got a slideshow of several slides of ladies wearing their uniforms. So I'm going to flip through these kind of quickly. There's not a lot to talk about, just a whole bunch of examples. So this lady happened to be an official in the US Food Administration, and later she became a suffragette and was famous that way as well. And here's what I'm talking about when I say there were groups and clubs. That was one aspect of the strategy of getting this information widespread. This is Girl Scouts on the lawn of the Food Administration, and they are kind of doing mailings of pledge cards and member information. And this is another Girl Scout gathering, seeing a food demonstration. This one's someone colorized, so I like that. We can see the colors. So, and this is one where they have a truck or a cart, and it says Wallach Playground. I looked that up. That's in the Bronx, and they just kind of repeated a food demonstration on a regular basis. It looks like these are 2 different days. This is on the front lawn of a city hall in a city in North Carolina, and it was a fountain, and they shut down the fountain and put a kind of covering over it so they could do demonstrations and gatherings. And then another one there. Somewhere in an indoor kitchen. And this one, somebody thought it was important enough that they made a stereoscope picture out of it. And I don't know where it is, but in a park. And this is in Wisconsin. This picture is from the Oshkosh Museum. And then she's making soap over here. And then here's one that looks like it's in a parade or a procession, and just noting that it's a 48-star flag that they had at the time. So, okay, another thing about that uniform, it kind of made the blue-white theme a theme. So these are posters for other programs, war-related, home front. This one's even in Canada, but they are all using that blue and white, that blue with the white color. So if you had made your pledge, you were entitled and asked to display this banner in your home. At that time, there was peer pressure involved too. So it was all voluntary, but there were people that took it more seriously than others. And that kind of makes me think back to the COVID days when people had kind of a different set of their own standards for when people should wear a mask, if you should have gatherings or not. And there were some people that reported gatherings or, confronted somebody who wasn't wearing a mask or was hoarding toilet paper. Some of that same stuff happened here. Some people took it more seriously than others. So there were homes that were reported for not being conservative enough. There was a story of a lady who terminated her household help because they refused to sign the pledge. Stories like that just show that everyone kind of takes a different approach to these kind of voluntary things. So, here's a couple of the posters that the Food Administration put out. They put out a ton of posters. There was no way for me to capture all of them. But if you go Googling for US Food Administration posters, you will be inundated with posters. So they did a lot. And then some of them were informative, some of them played on the emotion or the importance overseas, but some of them were pretty informative. So each state had its own program too. So it was somewhat organized and tied back into the Food Administration. Here's a few things. Here's a potato. They say, be a patriot. And war food train down here in Pennsylvania. There were recipe books, cookbooks, invoking Christendom, and saying that waste was not in line with that. Here's a sugar ration card, even though it's voluntary. That was out of Missouri. So people took the obligation seriously, and the states also got involved and were very organized in how they carried it forward. So here's Kansas. Here's one of the Kansas posters. It was called the Kansas State Council of Defense. And in 1920, a book was written and published that kind of summarized the work of the Kansas State Council of Defense. And a couple of highlighted points: no such organization had ever been established in the state before because there hadn't been a need. And then it did go almost topic by topic. There were tons of fronts that it operated on: agriculture, food, fuel, gardens, subgroups, just lots of committees, just covering every aspect of what you might need to conserve or save or not waste to get to the end of the war successfully. So here's the information on Butler County. And whoops, wrong way. Butler County, there was less information than for some of the other counties, and I suspect it's because Butler County was busy producing the oil that won the war. So, but I suspect Butler County was also quite vigilant in the food conservation as well. So, here's a picture of downtown El Dorado from about that time, thanks to this website. So, okay, other groups, lots of groups were targeted and asked to pitch in and conspicuously be part of the food administration effort. So they wanted children to do their part. Here is a theater sign that says that they show the official pictures of the food administration. Victory Gardens, and this museum has a Victory Garden, and it's maintained by a group of volunteers that keep it going nicely. So here's a school version, and just pointing to the importance of it here. Victory Gardens actually had their own commission too. So there were several commissions or agencies within the federal government during this time that were aligned in their mission. So there was also a National War Garden Commission, and for school gardens, that was part of the Bureau of Education as well. So fish. So there was also a movement to eat more fish because fish feed themselves. You don't have to go and buy food for them, and they're plentiful. And at that time, fish was not the popular food that it later became. So, and particularly shellfish as well. Lobster back then was something that it wasn't something on a high-end restaurant menu. It was something that if you were local to where the lobster trade happened, you probably ate a lot of lobster, and if you didn't have enough money for better cuts of meat, you ate some lobster. But this was a movement to eat more shellfish, eat more fish. So this is from the Food Administration, and then again, there was another aligned federal agency, and this one was the Bureau of Fisheries, and they had this great poster that said, "Eat the carp." So, and I love this, very cheeky. The carp discovered America in 1877. He found a land to his liking. He multiplied and filled the waters with his kind. So it keeps going. It says there's millions. The last census showed that 43 million pounds were marketed in a year. Nearly all of this came from a few states in the Midwest. Somebody ate those 43 million pounds of carp. And it ends up saying, catch the carp, buy the carp, make carp jelly, smoke it too. So that one was pretty fun. Okay, with fish, this is Evelyn Spencer. She was a fish ambassador from that time. She worked with the Bureau of, so here she is in the familiar outfit, uniform, but her hat shows that it's Bureau of Fisheries that she's with. She ended up producing a cookbook that has over 600 fish recipes in it. That came out in around 1920, so not during the war, but right after. So here's some of her advice for fish. She toured the country giving fish cooking demonstrations. So trying to get people to realize that fish is a good thing to cook and eat. So, and she in the last few years has come back as sort of a legend among food websites. So they say that she weaponized fish and taught people to eat more fish. So other businesses were asked or kind of not coerced, but strongly urged to take part in the food conservation program. And this is a memo or a press release saying that 500 leading hotel men pledged themselves to abolish absolutely the use of wheat products until the next harvest. So there's a badge for the Food Administration. There's a card showing that this person is a member who is supposed to spread the gospel throughout his territory of food conservation and use his influence with hotels, restaurants, etc. But it was all voluntary. So we have this sign up here that a restaurant put up saying that they violated the regulations, but they have pledged to be fully obedient in the future. We have this one that shut down for a few days, this bakery, because they didn't mix in enough other flour with their wheat flour. So somehow Hoover and his organization managed to make people want to do this without it being a legal obligation. Hold on here. Okay, they Hooverized the White House. So this is a 2-page layout in the Pictorial Review magazine, November 1918, showing all the things that Mr. and Mrs. Wilson did in the White House to conserve during this time. So they cut back on the number of courses of their meals. Rooms that weren't being used got shut down instead of being heated. They shut down the fountain in front of the White House, and I think they cut back on staff as well. So the Pictorial Review magazine, just a little note about the magazines. The Ladies' Home Journal was kind of just straight delivering information. Just here's what you might need to know about helping the war effort, ladies. This one was more vigilant, and a little more confrontational. They came out and said, these women aren't being paid. So they took a stand for women. And after the war was over, they kind of went full suffragette, just women's rights, women's equality, all of that. So just different approaches by the magazines as well. Okay, Armistice Day. So November 11th, 1918, the war ended. And here's what the headlines look like here. Had some help finding one of these, and then I found another one. Interestingly enough, instead of that giant peace headline, like in Ottawa, that just says peace in probably the biggest letters they had in their printing, for their printing press, El Dorado was saying, here's what the contract says. Like, here's the details. So I thought that was kind of funny. So, but then way down here, then in this little article, they expressed the joy everybody felt in having the war being over. So, okay, I'm gonna go back to that one because there's a couple points I want to make. So the war ended, lots of people were saved from starvation, but there was also a renewed worse famine building in those countries that had been at war, and I'll show a map in a minute. So, but for now, in 1920, the Food Administration was dissolved. It completely shut down. It didn't exist, doesn't exist today. It ended right then, but they brought in a new administration that would address the famine in the other countries post-war. So, and the Hoover Apron continued. Okay, so here is a post-war famine map. So early on, I showed a map that showed Belgium being kind of colored in solid black, and just a couple of other smaller countries in Europe showing that they were in famine conditions. This is post-war. Those solid black areas are famine. Finland in particular, it's just tragic. So in Finland, there's an article, this came from an article on the US food representative assigned to Finland. He said that when he got there, 60% of the Finnish children had already passed away from starvation. So truly dire. And Hoover was put in charge of this post-war relief effort called the American Relief Administration. And when this was going on in Finland, he sent a telegram to the Finland representative, just in code saying, lie about everything, keep the food coming. So, and then after World War I, Hoover became the US Secretary of Commerce and then the president. And when he was the president, his vice president was Charles Curtis, Kansan, and Native American. So, but they only served one term. So it was the Depression, and the US wasn't happy, and they moved on. So here's a picture of his library and archives at Stanford. That's where his archives are today. And then here's a picture of our president and vice president at the time. Okay, so after the war, reflecting back on the work of the Food Administration, everyone said that the American soldiers were the best nourished. And we know that the US helped save lives from starvation. More than 750,000 people volunteered for the US Food Administration. It was almost all volunteer. Overseas, in England, Queen tried to get the study of home economics brought in, and the King of Belgium hired the two economists, home economists that had helped the Food Administration, hired them to help study refugees' health. And the AHEA, the American Home Economics Association, gained a whole bunch of members, including Mr. and Mrs. Hoover. And Mrs. Rensselaer, one of the Cordell home economists, said that the Hoover apron really was quite a useful garment and continued to recommend it. So this is her course that she put out that is not a Hoover apron in the picture. Okay, so the Red Cross also adopted it. In this picture looks to me like World War I, but according to documents, the Red Cross didn't adopt the Hoover apron as one of its uniforms until the 1920s. So, and I love that picture. I think that picture is wonderful. But if starting in the 1920s, the Red Cross adopted it as one of its washable aprons for volunteers to wear on uniform. And they color-coded it according to the function of the volunteer. So here's a list in this article of the different color codes. This red and white one would have been administration. This far right picture here, I'm still trying to identify year and function of that one. It's clearly Red Cross and a Hoover apron. That's all I know so far. So, but this article is from 1936. Red Cross volunteers were working in what looks like they would call a veterans hospital, and they were wearing the Hoover apron. They were starting to be sold, 1920s, they were starting to be sold in ready-to-wear stores called the Hoover apron. Everybody knew what it was. And here's what it looked like in the 1920s. So the waist is gone, got that drop waist belt. And McCall's also did a little girl's pattern. Sears put this one out. Their brand was Superior Patterns. And Simplicity actually called theirs a Hooverette. So here's a mail order. Here's several mail order catalogs in the 1920s, and Hoover style apron there. This middle one is muslin, and it came pre-printed so that you could embroider the design on it. And then in 1928, Sears was saying it's our largest selling apron, the most practical and perfect garment. So 1930s, here's the Simplicity pattern. They brought the waist back to the waist, and they're calling two of these versions a Hooverette. And 1931, French designers were using it as a beach cover-up. I'm trying to get a better copy of that article so I can actually read it. Sears catalog. We've got sleeves and no sleeves. Here's a McCall's pattern. This one doesn't say Hoover or Hooverette on it, and it's clearly getting more feminine looking. Same with this Simplicity pattern. And then here's a pattern from the Pictorial Review Pattern Company, and they call theirs a Hooverette, and it's getting more feminine looking. This is the Dewberry Patterns Company, and they call theirs a Hooverette. And it has this symbol right here. So that's the National Recovery Administration. So that would have been from 1933 to 1935. So that would have been after Hoover and Roosevelt was in. That was his program. And it started in 1933 with an act of Congress. And then it ended in 1935 when the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional. So we have a time period we know for that pattern because of the symbol on the corner. So this one, I've lost track of the newspaper it came in. So, but I love the ad. So this is Butterick. They call theirs a Hoover coverall or morning frock. And then the one on the far right, that one's unidentified so far. So here down in the corner is one that's very much reminiscent in the color and the plainness. It's very much utility and reminiscent of the early ones. So Sears put a lot of Hooverettes in their catalogs. Here's 49th anniversary ones, and here's the pretty one. Over here, a dressy one, and then a twofer. This brownish one is a cotton suiting fabric. And then on the right is a practical one. And then a whole bunch of them right here. Reversible, dress up, and crinkleette. So this one does not use the word Hoover, but it's a Mary Martin pattern, touting the benefits of the design. And this one from the Gimbels ad in 1939, that one is almost looking dressy to me, almost kind of upscale, but it's the trim, the pockets and the collar have organdy trim on them. And the 1940s, we're still calling it a Hooverette. And in the Red Cross, they're back to doing things for World War II. They are winding bandages here, and they're saying one of the things you can wear if you're going to volunteer with us to package up gauze bandages is a Hooverette or another apron or smock. So then in 1942, we got our restrictions on the manufacture of clothing that restricted the yardage that could go into clothing. I don't think that was a direct ban, but this is kind of the same time where I stopped seeing Hooverette or the word Hooverette. So Sears did have one that they call the Magi Wrap apron dress, very much Hooverette looking. But I kind of stopped seeing them in the catalogs like I was before. So, and then this is post-World War II, World War II and post. Here's some posters. And then this is from the Stafford flour mill, Stafford, Kansas. And they are showing the crop program that came post-World War II, again, to feed people where food was scarce. Post-World War II, here's a Hooverette by Fruit of the Loom. And this is kind of where my trail runs cold. So we've gone through several decades, but at this point, I stopped seeing Hooverette, and I don't see as many wrap dresses. So it kind of slowed down or stopped here, at least the Hooverette, calling it a Hooverette and thinking of it as kind of an institution. So you do still see the dresses, the wrap front, definitely 1940s, but I don't see Hooverette being used. I'm a 1960s kid, so if somebody said Hooverette, this is what I thought of. So, and then in 1969, here's a fashion and style reporter in New York who wrote that basically the Hoover apron is gone forever. And I saw other articles where they would kind of make fun of somebody wearing a Hooverette and watching soaps all morning. So kind of took a downturn as far as status. But less than 5 years later, the wrap dress is back with Diane von Furstenberg, Belgian designer, being worn by royalty and first ladies. So, and that was 50 years later that these pictures were taken. And writers have written about whether Diane von Furstenberg used the Hoover apron or not. I don't know that it matters. I don't have an opinion. I don't know who to, I don't know what she doesn't say or hasn't said, but it's clearly a practical, comfortable version of that wrap dress. So and worn by a First Lady whose president has ties to Butler County. So here is the Diane von Furstenberg website right now today. Right on the front, they have this wrap dress that is strikingly similar to the very first Hoover Apron. So kind of coming full circle. So you have an assignment. So find those Hoover aprons. They are very rare. That slideshow of all those pictures I showed you of ladies wearing this, that's literally every picture I could find on the internet. It looked like a lot of pictures, but it's all that's out there. Those are rare. I've never seen one in real life, okay? The National World War I Museum in Kansas City doesn't have one, and I don't think the Smithsonian has one. So somewhere in a World War I trunk or a box in a storage unit, somebody has one of these. So, and it's an artifact, and it's rare, even if it's in really, really bad shape. I think they just got used up. It's a great big piece of fabric, flat piece of fabric that could have been used for anything else after you no longer needed it as a conservation measure. But somewhere there's one, and it is an artifact, and it's rare. So keep on the lookout. The pattern too. So those are hard, either hard to find. The one that they sent from the Food Administration, I've never seen one of those. So keep your eye out. So secondly, a Hoover apron. That's another thing. If you look in museums, you see pretty dresses and fancy dresses and things that got preserved and taken care of. These were used up. They were house dresses. So they're the rare ones now. And so it might not look like much in a box in storage. It's been in there for decades, but it's potentially an artifact. So keep that in mind. So here's my list of resources. If anyone's interested, I'll make this available to Bailey. And in one of the, in preparing for this talk, I listened, along with the other research, I listened to both of these lectures that were from the World War I Museum in Kansas City. They're from the COVID era when all these were online. And they're both excellent. And there's so many different angles that you can kind of go deeper in with this subject. This one was on the food aspects, and this one was on the international relations and war strategy. And both were just, I thought, extremely interesting. And we have coloring pages, if you want to take a coloring page home. And then lastly, we have, the museum has some souvenir packets. If you want to take home a little set of, you can buy one of these if you want to take home a little set of the posters and cards that are in here. So, and what I have for you now, if you want, what I'd like to do, I wanted to save time and for you guys to share. You've known somebody that wore a Hooverette, I'm sure, or you have some other memory of World War I or World War II food conservation. And now's the time, if you want to share it, you can. I also have some little cards if you want to write it on here and then put it on that board back there. We'll collect those as well. So I'm going to bring these around. Does anybody have something to share? A story about a Hoover apron? Memory of somebody wearing them?
I know nothing, but I have a question. And maybe you alluded to it in an earlier slide or whatever, but can you put a couple of things come to mind, like clothes that I see just really the fabric in them really are really sharply fabricated.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I wonder if you just and so there's always behind somebody said, oh, no, it's
From a Hoover apron or Hooverette.
Was there anything perhaps political about like Hooverville and everything else that we want to distance ourselves from that?
You know, that is really funny because I did not run across anything like that. Yeah, when Hoover was helping the food effort. I mean, he was considered one of the greatest humanitarians the world had ever known. So when he became president, he's now on the list of like one of the 10 worst presidents we've ever had. So it's different function. So it's hard to reconcile that. But during those time periods, like when we saw a lot of Hooverettes or Hoover aprons, I did not see anything that said, where somebody said, I'm not going to wear one, or I'm not going to use that name, or I am going to because I'm a fan of Hoover. I never have seen any of that. I mean, it seemed to be either a tribute to him and the food effort, or just not thinking in terms of associating it with a political position. So, I mean, we all know there's something we could wear right now that would kind of show our, that would evoke emotion even, showing our kind of political position. And I did not see any of that with the Hoover apron. So it may have been out there, but I've not come across anything. Good question. Yeah, yes. Hold on.
Thank you.
So I'm going to hand these out in case somebody wants to write one down. You don't have to put your name on it or your city or town, but would love to have these. I'm going to put a few on each table. You can use them or not. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Is the frock the same thing when they write about frocks? And
I think so. I think it's just another word for a little dress.
that's what I understood.
Seems like it would have been. I mean, if it were worn over something. Yeah. So did I get every table? You can leave your name off if you want, or you can put contact information on the back if you want. It's up to you. Everybody get one if you want. Okay, I'm gonna quick go on. And that is it. If there's no more questions or comments, thank you. I enjoyed this very much. Thanks.
I'm just gonna sneak up here quick. I'm gonna grab a drink. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you going through the weather and making it out here today. We do this on the third Thursday of every month from 12 to 1. Remember, next month we will be having a pre-order. I will be sending that out to our members in our newsletter. So you will, and it'll be on our social media as well. So you just keep on the lookout for that information to pre-order lunch. That will be here for you for our next speaker series. Coming up on July 24th, it's about a month away, we do have our HF Sinclair STEM Day for kids. It is a free event for kids. In the morning, we will have a STEM fair where the kids can go around to the different stations and experience different STEM activities. We are still looking for some partners to help us with that. We would like to have 40 stations, and we're at about 20 right now. So we need about 20 more partners to create some STEM stations for us that we will do in this building, so you won't be outside in like the July heat. It will be in here. So if you know anybody or yourself might be interested in being one of those partners, just send me a message or talk to me after the event. In the afternoon, we will have some competitions. We will have an air balloon powered car race. We will have a bridge building contest and a paper airplane contest. And more information can be found on our social media and our website on that. Thank you guys for coming. I hope y'all have a safe trip home.